It would have been obvious like two trains on a collision course, but I was paying no attention. I could have blamed it on one train hiding in a tunnel, but all the warning signs were there. I was just too enamored with the girl to notice when the other train came roaring out. Let's get to the point. The metaphors were present throughout school. My wife wanted an open marriage, which I refused, and she ended up cheating on me in our bedroom. Though they weren't related, they were not distant in their teens and only double-dated boys. If a guy liked one, he had to find a date for the other. I liked both, but I never bothered with a double-date game because it was too much hassle and the girls were picky. They were Mercedes Koff and Portia Rowan, known as the twins. They dressed, spoke, and styled their hair the same way that they might as well have been joined at the hip. I moved in with Uncle Harry and Auntie Mavis in the suburbs when I was 16 years old. My dad told me that if I got an apprenticeship with my Uncle Harry in London, I would have a job for life. I also had one day a week at technical college, where Uncle Harry worked hard, even on the weekends, to make up for my college days. By the end of my apprenticeship, my trips home had decreased from monthly to hardly 3 times a year, and my home felt like a stranger's place. While discussing plans over tea one day, I mentioned a large blank wall on the building. The boss handed me the artist's drawing and said, "Show me." I sketched the changes I thought would be improvements, and after some heated exchanges, I was called to the site office where the boss, owner, and architect were. The work was easy to find with my papers, and the pay was good. I started on a site with 50 new houses, and then I moved to a smaller job on a barn conversion. The architect told me that I should become an architect or designer because I have a knack for design. A few weeks later, I enrolled in a part-time college course in architecture, and I kept working on construction sites to pay for my education. One day in the college library, I saw a young woman who looked familiar. She gave me a quick smile before going back to her book, and I stared at her, trying to put her face in the right place. She noticed that I was staring, got up, and came over to me. She turned my book and said that it would be easier for me to read if it was oriented correctly. Roger. She's in the United States doing an internship, and I asked her where she was. My placement fell through, so I decided to brush up on my Spanish here. We talked until the librarian shushed us and then moved to the refectory. By the time she had to go to class, we had made plans for the evening. I drove her home in my old van because I was doing some side work and needed it for my tools. When I pulled up outside her fancy house, I wondered what her father opened the door at 7:30 on Friday, giving me a once-over as if I were unwanted, and he looked at my van with obvious contempt. Inside, I met her mother and younger sister Estelle, whom I remembered from school, and they were pleasant, but her father obviously didn't like me. My parents thought we sat in the van talking about school until I asked her out for the next evening. Her representative fly hinted at something I missed at the time, which would be nice, Roger. I haven't been out since Tish left. That evening, we went to a local pub with live music and a dance floor. Although we danced a few times, we spent the majority of the night talking. I can't recall what we talked about, but we always seemed to agree on almost everything except Portia, which I didn't care about. Behavior. When she walked in the door, I was speechless. I'd known her since she was a child, and while I had noticed her pleasant face and nice figure the day before, I wasn't prepared for the beautiful woman who entered that evening, but pretended to do so for Dee's sake because she was obviously missing her lifelong friend. Our first date led to a second and a third, and by the end of the month, Mercedes and I were inseparable. When she wasn't working or attending college, Dee would meet me for lunch and wait by my van after evening classes. I was in love with her, and she seemed to feel the same way. After 3 months together, she joined me in bed because she couldn't take the pill, so we used other protection, which occasionally soured the mood. Satisfy each other. I kept in touch with Tish on a regular basis, but I was unaware of the impact it had on our relationship. Her physical preferences changed over time. At first, she didn't want to engage in mouth-loving, but by February, she was excited to try it, and we began discussing getting married. I bought her a ring in late July, and we intended to tie the knot after her finals the following summer. Her mother was overjoyed, but her father believed she could outdo a builder, Estelle. In early August, Dee's sister bluntly suggested that I marry her instead. Portia had returned from the States with her American boyfriend, George Greenlake, and I didn't like him because he was rash and knew it all. One evening, I came home to find her in my apartment looking upset. 3 coffee cups were on the table, and when I told her that I would change quickly so we could go out, she blurted out, "You can't go in there yet. Tish and George are using our bed like hell." This is a fitting statement from me, as I firmly believe in the adage that an Englishman's home is my parents' castle, and my bed is the most personal item in my house. This probably started when I returned from Uncle Harry's to my parents' house and discovered a lodger sleeping in my bed. I think they heard me lose my temper because Portia and George came into the kitchen a few minutes later, still getting dressed, and even though they apologized, they didn't make the bed or change the sheets. Dee assured me that they hadn't asked her permission, and based on their actions, I thought they were the most important people in the world. Dee always accompanied me when we were in the country, and I refused to ride in her father's car because George drove once they were out of her house. One evening, I watched with sick amusement as George drove out of a pub parking lot straight into a bus. I honked my horn, which was able to stop the bus driver before too much damage was done. George had driven on the wrong side of the road, which is a common mistake for foreigners. Was not insured to drive and lacked an international license, but the police accepted his American one. After Portia's father arrived, I took Dee home, and George flew back home the following weekend. September arrived swiftly, and my old van became essential for moving Tish and Dee's belongings to their university apartment. Suddenly, Portia was happy to travel in my van once her belongings were loaded. After her father found out that his new SOB had been wrecked, he didn't volunteer to drive her, and soon after the girls were gone, and I missed Dee but not Tish even though we had dated for a. Dee's mother invited me to Sunday lunch the week after the girls left. Even though I had only been invited to her house once for a meal, primarily to ask her father for her hand in marriage. I got along well with Dee's mother and sister, who continued to follow me like a puppy. Dee's father even started calling me son and invited me to play golf, a sport I would have to take up after marrying Dee to please the in-laws. I suspected that these invitations had a hidden agenda, because whenever Dee returned home each month, we spent a lot of time at her parents' house. By Christmas, wedding preparations were well underway, with Dee's mother and Estelle arranging everything with Dee and me agreeing to their plans. Dee's father was paying for it. I would ask if you were okay with this, and he would nod and say, "Wait till it's your turn, son, only have boys." He wasn't a bad guy, and Estelle saw our home. I was now a frequent and welcomed visitor most weekends, and Tish joined us to talk about George and her plans to marry him after graduation. I saw that letter and it was brutal. A few weeks later, Dee suggested delaying our wedding because Tish was upset. The girls graduated and moved back home, and both of them quickly found jobs at local banks. I continued juggling college and work, often working alone or with another person. Frank would raise his eyebrows whenever she said that everything was going great until just after Easter when Portia got dumped by George, who left her for another girl, confirming that he was an insensitive idiot. I was patient, but it seemed we had to wait until Tish found a new boyfriend before Dee would marry me in early December. I went to pick Dee up at 7:30, but she and Tish weren't home and hadn't called. I discovered her car at a pub on the outskirts of town, where she and Tish were engrossed with a guy. At first, I saw Dee almost every day, but she started going out with Tish more frequently until 3 nights a week after my night classes. When they left around 9, I sat across the room and watched them eat and talk, noting that Dee was drinking non-alcoholic drinks. When Dee saw my van, she came back inside in search of me and asked, "How long have you been here, Roger?" My fiancé got up around 8, so I had a quiet drink and asked, "Why didn't you join us?" She asked, "You didn't want me along, did you? If you had, would you have called? Was it a fancy menage a trois or something?" I asked, "How can you say that Rodney invited Tish and she didn't want to go alone?" Dee responded defensively. He bragged all night about being tough, but when we took it outside, he fled after attempting to slam the door in my face. "Did you have to do that?" Tish liked him, so I didn't do anything. He talked himself into a corner in a fight, then fled. I told her, "Well, I forgot to tell you I was here. Now drive your friends home and drop the idiot off first. I don't trust him." "Good night," I said after getting up. I went back to the bar to finish my drink, and Dee came back inside for a minute to whisper with Tish before they left. The following evening, I didn't pick Dee up as usual, and she locked herself in my apartment. "Why didn't you pick me up?" she asked. "Oh, I forgot. Don't talk rubbish. This is about last night, isn't it?" she accused. "It's about us and your friendship with Tish," I explained. "What does Tish have to do with it?" she objected, saying, "I can be the guy you want to marry, but you worry more about Tish. Think about what you really want and tell me tomorrow night if you're not here by 9. It's over. You can keep or sell the ring." I decided that if she hadn't been around, we would have been married by now. "But you've postponed our wedding because Tish hasn't found someone." "I'm not waiting anymore. The wedding is in February or it's off. And you'll only see Tish twice a week on the evenings I'm at college." Changed my mind, but I was done waiting when I got home from work. Dee's house kept calling, so I ignored it. At 9 o'clock, I left to watch mine with a friend. Tish and the guy from the pub came with me, and she searched my apartment, finding it empty. They all left and Dee returned alone. Later, my friend suggested that I speak with Dee, but I felt that she had made up her mind around midnight. By morning, neither of them had left, and I couldn't leave my friend's apartment without being noticed. They probably knew I would need my van, so I called a guy who worked for me and had him drive it to the location. The girls followed the van, thinking I was driving, so I got in my car, which Dee was unaware of, and drove DR to a house I had purchased for our married life, which was still under construction. Every time the wedding date was rescheduled, the house's construction was delayed, so I stayed at the house overnight. The following day was college day, and I couldn't miss it, even though my building projects were going well and I was making a good living. I wanted to be an architect, and the car that Dee didn't know about saved me that day. I saw both girls at college, but I avoided them. If Dee hadn't been alone, I might have talked to her, but Portia's presence stopped me. That night, I called the apartment, and the person who answered the phone informed me that Portia had left Pora alone. "Where are you?" I asked. "That's none of your business." "I'm sorry, Roger," I said, "but I couldn't let Pora go to that concert alone." But she wasn't alone. She had that guy with her? Or was he with you? "He's Tish's boyfriend. You know that I'm the one acting strangely, girl. Did you tell your mother to confirm the February wedding date?" "No, I didn't. Last night you had the option of choosing Portia or her. The engagement and wedding are over, so please leave the apartment clean. As you've probably noticed, I don't live there anymore. Roger, you live in the house I bought for our wedding, but you chose not to live here with me. Goodbye." I hung up the next evening when Dee's parents came to visit me. They were aware of the house because I talked to them about almost everything, even though I had a shaky relationship with Dee's father. They knew my position and kept my secrets about the house and car. They hoped that Dee's love for me would make her stop being with Portia, but that didn't happen. They wished me well and never told Dee about the house or their visit because they thought Dee would always be influenced by Portia. Dee tried to speak with me over the following few months, but I refused to. Dee continued to tell people we were engaged while Portia was around, which caused issues. I was trying to move on and started dating other girls, but it wasn't going well. One girl wanted a serious relationship over her, so we got into a fight. After that, I didn't hear any more claims from Dee about our engagement, and at the end of that college year, I gave up on my goal of becoming an architect because my building business had taken off, which was true. I had built a reputation for high-quality work, but in reality, Dee had enrolled in a design course I needed, so I decided not to register after seeing her name on the list. Instead, I concentrated on expanding my business and soon became one of the most well-respected small builders in town. I didn't see Dee or Portia very often, though Estelle occasionally dropped by, hinting that she might take Dee's place in my life. Although I liked her, I knew it wouldn't work because I would constantly be running into Dee. Almost 2 years after splitting from Dee, I reconnected with. I focused on Shirley in my business for the next 5 years, despite her illness, and she gave me 2 amazing daughters. In our 5th year, however, Shirley's cancer returned aggressively, and the chemotherapy proved ineffective, so she decided to stop treatment and spent 3 more years with us before passing away. Shirley was a fun friend from school, and we fell in love quickly. 8 months later, we were married in a small ceremony. Although I'm not religious, I wanted Shirley's grave to be in a prominent location, So one day I'll visit her at the house. After the funeral, I was shocked to see Da's father Frank and Estelle, who offered their condolences and explained that Da's mother was ill in the hospital. Our daughters, ages 6 and 7, helped me through the wake and funeral. Shirley had prepared them well. Why she was unable to attend. A few days later, I went to see her in the same ward where Shirley had been, and even though she was getting better, I never found out what was wrong with her. Catherine insisted that I call her, and when she got home, she asked me to bring my daughters to see her. It turns out that she had spoken with Shirley a lot in her final days, and Catherine informed me that Dee was no longer living at home, so there was no chance of them running into her. 3 weeks later, I took my daughters to meet Catherine and Frank, who became like grandparents to them. Estelle frequently visited, and before her boyfriend Russell began visiting, the neighbors assumed we were involved. He was keen to marry Estelle, but she kept him waiting, just as she had treated me. Estelle and Russell helped a lot with the girls, which made me rethink hiring a nanny. One day, Russell told me that he was frustrated that Estelle had not committed to marriage, so I told her to take advantage of the opportunity with Russell, unlike what had happened with Da and me. Her cryptic response was, "You really don't know, do you?" Asked me to be the best man. I accepted, knowing that Dee would be attending the wedding, but I didn't want to worry Estelle. My daughters were bridesmaids, and on a sunny June day, I stood with Russell at the altar. During the service, there was a commotion because Portia and George were late, which caused Estelle to mutter something that the congregation could hear because of her microphone. The service went well, and as we left the church, Catherine turned to me and said, "We never thought they'd have the cheek to turn up. We thought we were safe sending them in." It was obvious that something had happened in the family that I was unaware of outside during the required photo session. I noticed Dee wasn't in the lineup. Estelle tried to motion her over, but Dee didn't move, so Estelle gestured to me, understanding her unspoken request. Since they live in America, I was invited. As we got to the back of the church, I saw Dee sitting with a couple of other women. She looked unhappy, and her presence surprised Catherine, causing her to falter briefly before continuing with a smile and nod to Dee. I slipped away, circled behind Dee, and took her by the arm, guiding her into the line. "This is your sister's wedding?" I whispered firmly. "What do I have to smile about?" Dee replied. "A lot more than my wife had. That was her grave you almost stood on back there." I reminded her that she apologized and that she had reasons to be grateful. One of the ushers gave me a small bouquet, which I gave to Dee before I left. Dee managed to smile. Even though she still looked unhappy after the pictures, I started herding people into the line. Before leaving, I went to Shirley's grave, where there were now 3 small bouquets in addition to the large one I had previously placed. I spoke to Shirley as I always do, even though I don't believe in the afterlife. It's funny how we do that, isn't it? In the limousines for the reception, my daughters demanded hugs and praise for their behavior. I noticed that their bouquets were missing, probably handed off to Da, who had vanished back into the crowd, which was a relief. Family members as if they could hear us at the hotel reception. It was evident that Da's arrival was unexpected when Catherine left the greeting line and hurried to move the seats at the top table to accommodate Dee. I offered assistance but didn't inquire about the family situation. After the meal and speeches, I thought I could unwind because being a best man entails more than you might imagine, and I wasn't ready for Russell's speech when he revealed that he had a crush on me for years and thanked me for persuading her to marry him. Only a few months, but I gave everyone the assurance that he was a good fit for Estelle based on my daughter's approval. After the speeches, the dancing started with Estelle and Russell leading the way, followed by the parents and then me and the bridesmaids. It was enjoyable for everyone, and Estelle and Russell joined us in creating a special waltz Dee. Later, Estelle asked me to dance, so I took the opportunity to ask about Dee. "Roger will meet me in reception in 10 minutes, and I'll explain." After we danced, I heard Estelle talk to Russell, who nodded. She then went to the woman's room, which had another door to the foyer. I met her there, and we sat in a corner while she explained that when you and Dee broke up, Mom and Dad were upset with her because they were constantly concerned about her relationship with Portia. Not because they believed it to be physical, but because of Portia's influence. They were excited when you came along, but Frank wasn't too fond of me. Dad thought you were fantastic but played the. When Dee began to postpone the wedding, we all warned her that she would lose you. When you called it off, it was because of Dee and Portia. Portia kept telling Dee that she could do better, and to keep you waiting, Dee couldn't see how Portia was using her. Why did you invite Portia to your wedding? Her father is a business partner of Dad's, so we didn't think they would actually show up. She moved to London because she felt too guilty to face you and didn't want to run into you and Shirley. We cut you off to avoid slipping up and saying something too. A year after you broke up with Dee, George asked Portia to marry him. They moved to the States. Dee was dumped and realized how Portia had used her. She lost the only man she loved for a friend who left her. She had a breakdown after that and thought you would return. She had to go to a clinic. Shirley asked Mom to take care of you and the girls when they first met in the hospital. Estelle explained why your mom was so shocked to see Dee today. I asked Dee to come down for my bachelorette party, and she looked better than she had in years. We were getting along until someone mentioned that you were the best man. Dee said she couldn't come if you were here, so we assumed she wasn't coming. Mom rearranged the seating to make up for her absence. Estelle responded, but you only had to say, and I would have moved aside. You're an amazing person, but we couldn't let the girls down. They were thrilled to be my bridesmaids, weren't they? Estelle said, yes. And I was so proud of them. Their mother would have been proud too, and I replied, I wish I could have known her. From what Mom says, she was a brave woman and lucky to have you. Estelle replied warmly, but the girls must have persuaded them because they worked on her all day yesterday. Now, I need a favor, and you can say no. Estelle said hesitantly, on your wedding day. I want you to do a favor for me. Russell has danced with her, but she won't join the family table because you and the girls are there. Thank you for getting her in the pictures. By the way, Estelle asked me to do anything for you, but what if Dee doesn't dance? I'm worried. Russell and I have a plan. He'll ask Dee to dance when we return and you'll dance with me. We'll bump into each other by chance, and once you're dancing with her after the song, Dee won't say no. I'm sure she won't leave once she's at the family table. Estelle explained, Are you sure this is a good idea? I asked. I'm not sure. But she needs to see that we don't hold grudges, and I hope you don't either. At my hen party, everything was going well until you were mentioned, so I'm hoping your presence will help. Estelle admit. All right. Leighton, do it, lead the way. I agreed. Oh, Roger. Don't be like that. Estelle laughed. I'm just teasing you. And I smiled in response. The band began playing a waltz and we joined the dancers. I saw Russell leading Dee toward us. The slight bump and sudden partner switch caught her off guard, and she stiffened when she realized she was dancing with me. I gently urged her to relax, and she did, leaning heavily against me as the waltz ended. Tomorrow morning, she has something for you. You'll be in, right? Estelle asked. Yes. The girls are so excited they'll probably be up all night. Estelle and her mother kissed us good night, and my girls, though they kissed Dee too, didn't seem to recognize her. The following morning, we woke up late, and the girls were up before me, eager to swim. Shirley had a rule that they wouldn't go into the pool without an adult. Frank sat on her other side while I joined my daughters. The band was loud, so I couldn't hear them talking, but it was good to see them talking to her parents around 11. After everyone had settled down with cold drinks, Catherine asked to speak privately with Frank, who stayed with the girls. I led Catherine to the lounge where we could still see the kids and Frank playing, and she gave me an envelope from her bag. Just before noon, Catherine and Frank arrived, and we greeted them. It was evident that my girls had bonded with them. My parents preferred my brother's kids, and Shirley's parents lived far away, so the girls hadn't bonded with them as much. When she became too weak, she dictated the rest to me. I took the envelope and started to open it. I'll go outside while you read it. If you need to talk, I'm here. I unfolded the letter, which was written in Catherine's neat script and Shirley's deteriorating handwriting. Hey, lover boy, it started. How are you and our girls getting along without me? I asked Kathy to hold on to it for that long before giving it to you because I'll have been gone for 6 months by the time you read it. When the doctor broke the news to me, we had only been dating for a few weeks. I was afraid you would stay with me out of a twisted sense of duty because you know you're that kind of man, but I must tell you that I loved you and that you loved me for who I was. I'm not sure what I want to say or how to say it. So please forgive me if it doesn't come out right. Roger. I feel guilty not only for leaving you but also for marrying you in the first place and bringing all my problems into your life. I'm sorry I can never repay you for all the love you've shown me. Roger. I've loved you more than any man I've ever known. I know you don't believe in an afterlife, but I hope one day you'll be proven wrong and we'll meet again there. That's the worst part over with. Now, I need you to consider the rest of your life and our girls' lives. I have a big favor to ask. Please find another mother for our girls. They will need a. I believe I know the best candidate, and I believe you do too, Mother. From what C has told me, I'm sure Mercedes loved you and still does. But she was influenced by that awful girl. I know it's not nice to say, but that worked out in my favor, even though I know it upset you at the time. They say the Lord works in mysterious ways. So please think about finding Mercedes again and show her compassion and love you've shown me over the past few years, and I hope that she will love you and my girls as much as I do Roger. At this point, the letter changed to Catherine's handwriting. Since I've been in the hospital, Catherine and Frank have become good friends, and I've also met Estelle, who came to see me the other day. Estelle loves you too. God, you are a lucky man. Kathy promises to keep a watchful eye on you and our girls, even though they don't have any. I can't think of anything else to say, but thank you, Roger, for loving me. And remember that I will always watch over you and the girls from wherever I am until we meet again. Shirley. They also assure me that they will treat our girls as if they are their own, so please let them do that no matter what. Kathy has been a good friend to me during these long, lonely nights. If everything goes as planned, I hope Catherine and Frank will be the girls' real grandparents. I can only assume that Catherine had been watching me read the letter through the lounge window when I suddenly realized I couldn't hear the girls playing in the garden anymore. I must have looked around in panic, but it's okay. Frank took them out for ice cream today because it's warm enough for swimsuits. Catherine said reassuringly, "Thank you, Cther." I sat and cried for I don't know how long, and one for each year we were together was in Shirley's unsteady hand. Yes, but you don't have to follow Shirley's suggestions about Mercedes. The letter is private and I'll keep it confidential. Catherine said, "Thank you, Kathy. What do you think of Shirley's ideas?" I asked. "I won't advise you, Roger. I'm Mercedes's mother, so I'm biased. It's your decision, but you should get to know Mercedes again before deciding." Catherine cautiously replied, "Dee might not want to marry me anymore. It's been years I expressed my concern. But Dee said yesterday how lovely you're." Catherine said, "I understand I still have strong feelings for leaving her was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I'm not sure I can let go of those feelings. Are you going to try Catherine?" she asked softly. Of course it was Shirley's last request, but I need to know Dee socially again and see how the girls get along with her before considering a relationship. You're right, the children must come. It was implied that she regrets not marrying you. Catherine added thoughtfully, kissing my forehead. Shirley knew you well. She always said you were the most thoughtful person she knew, she said, blushing. Yes, we need to see if they connect with Dee, I said, emphasizing the importance of the children's feelings. We can't let them feel someone is replacing Shirley. It would be a disaster. If the children aren't happy, I couldn't do that to her. I blushed. How are we going to get the girls together with Dee? I asked, clarifying. Trying to change the topic, they said they missed your old pool parties. Since they are coming down for a family reunion after Estelle and Russell return from their honeymoon, it would be a good idea to have one in a few weeks. Frank and I could assist with the cooking, and Dee might show up unannounced and stay even if she is embarrassed. You would be busy entertaining guests, and Estelle and Russell could entertain the kids. We'll see how they work with them. The girls have talked about having pool parties, but without Shirley, it feels different. I acknowledged that Shirley would love the idea, remembering that she wanted you to find the girls another mother. Catherine reminded me of this. 2 weeks later, I woke up to hear my daughters talking to someone downstairs, and I dragged myself out of bed to find Estelle and Russell unloading a car full of goodies. That's when I realized how much work Shirley had put into these pool parties, as she called them, and that they had brought a lot of items I had. Estelle later informed me that my girls had given Catherine a list of forgotten items when she called the night before. I wondered why the girls hadn't pointed out my mistakes when I asked, but they said I would be too busy. The lawns need to mown before any guests arrive, so follow instructions, Roger, and don't ask questions. I believed I had trained them and me well. Shortly after lunch, some of my employees began to arrive with their wives, and I spent the majority of the day mingling frequently with Russell as company, and I believe I heard almost every detail of their honeymoon except for the private stuff. Catherine and Frank arrived around 1:30, with a very quiet Dee in tow, and seemed embarrassed to see me at first. However, she soon started playing with Estelle and the kids in the pool. I believe she was wearing one of Estelle's swimsuits, which looked familiar. When I thought it was time for the kids to go to bed, Russell nudged me while Dee went upstairs with Estelle to calm them down. Half an hour later, when the two sisters returned downstairs, I went up to kiss my girls goodnight. "Is that really her father?" my oldest asked as soon as I arrived at their bedroom. "Who are you talking about? Is she going to be our new mother?" The younger one replied. "Hold on. Where did you two get the idea that there is going to be a new mommy? Mommy told us a long time ago that you would find another mother for us." So I asked, puzzled. "Don't be silly, Daddy," my oldest confidently replied. "Oh, she did, do she? And what else did your mommy tell you that she didn't tell me?" I asked, and she said that Estelle's sister would likely be our new mother, and we were to help you catch her. The younger one added, "Catch her? What did she mean by that?" Mommy said, "Dee got away the first time, and if you got friendly with her again, we should help you catch her." My oldest responded, "Oh God, surely you've really set me up, haven't you?" I muttered to myself, "Sorry, Daddy, I couldn't hear what you said." My youngest said, "Oh, nothing, girls. I was just praying to your mother. Now, give me a kiss, good night, and we'll talk about things tomorrow." I tried to remain calm. "Is Dee coming over again? We like her." My youngest said, "I don't know, baby. She might." I replied, "Well, if she doesn't come over, can we visit her?" My oldest asked, "Hopefully." I thought, this is my time. "Okay, girls. If she doesn't come to see us tomorrow, we'll go see her now. Will you both please go to sleep?" I said, "Good night, Daddy." And they all said it in unison. I'm pretty sure I heard them giggle as I left the room. When I reached the stairs, I sat down on the top step. I could hear the party outside and someone doing something in the kitchen. I needed some alone time to process what my girls had said, so I needed some time. Although I pushed Dee away because I didn't want to share her feelings with Tish, who was no longer involved, I think I could see myself sharing them with my girls. Ever since Shirley passed away, you've been going through life without giving anything much thought. A small voice in my head seemed to tell me that it was obvious that my girls liked Dee from the moment they saw her. I recalled how they looked at her at Estelle's wedding. What did Shirley mean when she said, "Half of you is enough for me, Roger"? Had I never given Shirley all of my love? Did she know that I had a place in my heart for Dee? Damn, that woman could read me like a book bugger. Why does life have to be so complicated? Wouldn't it be nice to be one of those people who sees everything in black and white? I have a lot of different thoughts at once. Let's think this out logically, Roger. I'm positive that I love Dee, and the girls do too. They've only recently met her, but they certainly seem to like her. There isn't much about Dee that they don't like, but they seem ready to accept Dee as a surrogate mother without question. Now, does Dee like the girls? Based on what I saw by the pool, she's really taken with them. No, I don't think that was an act. I could see them bonding quickly. The big one does still love you well, though. I believe Frank was a more diligent cook than I ever was. As I got closer to the group of chairs, Catherine got up and came over to me. "Mercedes, Estelle and Estelle are in the kitchen doing some cleaning, so this might be a good time for you to speak to Mercedes alone while she's busy. One way to find out, you stupid sod, is to ask her back outside." Most of the other guests were seated in a large circle on the patio by the pool. Russell was making sure everyone's drinks were topped off while Frank was still cleaning the barbecue. I can assure you that none of us have spoken to Mercedes about you two getting back together. But I'm afraid the girls were asking her some embarrassing questions earlier, and we weren't expecting that, Catherine admitted, so I assume Shirley had been planning this for a long time. At the sink, "Don't worry. Estelle will make herself scarce when you get in there." Catherine suggested between you and my two girls. You're planning to get Dee and me married off pretty quickly, aren't you? I asked with a hint of amusement. Roger. I wish she would have told me, Catherine. How long did you know Shirley? Did you not just meet her on her last day in the hospital? I asked. Well, no, Roger, we met at the cancer support group, didn't you know? Catherine revealed. No, Shirley never talked about what went on air, so she was planning this reconciliation between Dee and me for some time. I asked, feeling both surprised and realizing that, to be honest, Roger, I'm not really sure when she found out who I was. But she definitely asked me about you and Dee. I told her the truth as I saw it. I went into the kitchen where Dee was washing and Estelle was drying, and I took the drying cloth from Estelle before Dee realized I had been in the room for a few minutes. However, she did tell me repeatedly that if you two got back together, she wouldn't have to worry about you and the girls. Catherine explained. Damn it. And I said, woman's intuition, Roger. You chose a wonderful wife in Shirley. Now why don't you go have a quiet word with Mercedes? Washing and setting things on the draining board, and I dried them. She stopped abruptly. She must have seen my arm take the plate, so she just put it down. She turned and stared at me for a long time because we've done this together. Dee, I put the plate in the rack and held out my hand for the next one. Dee handed me the dirty plate she was about to wash. Shouldn't it go in the water first? I asked, smiling. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, she said as she took the plate back and began to wash it. We're thinking, but not about the washing up, Dee. Let me know what you were thinking. I asked her gently. Do you really want to know? Her voice was shaking, and she said, I wouldn't ask if I didn't want to know. I replied honestly, what a bloody idiot I am, she confessed, and I asked, my heart thumping. Well, I had the chance to spend the rest of my life with you, and I threw it away. How could I have been that stupid? She said, her eyes welling. Did you say that the Lord works in mysterious ways? If he does exist, and I'm not saying that he does, he had a job for me to do before we were married. But I believe that job is over, and there's a job for you to do now. I said, trying to think of the right words, and he looked at me bewildered. Well, there are two little girls upstairs who are missing a mother, and they seem to think you were the chosen one. I said softly, and he looked at me. To lighten the mood, I said, they want to wear more as your bridesmaids. Roger, are you asking me to marry you? Dee asked in shock. But no, I don't have to ask you that question. I asked you that question years ago, and I'm still waiting for you to name the bloody day. 2 plates broke. Dee was washing one when she dropped it, nearly fainting, and I dropped the other as I went to catch Dee before she fell. The sound of the plates breaking drew Catherine and Estelle into the kitchen from the hall. By 2 young girls who ought to have been sleeping, I had a nasty suspicion that there were leaves falling outside. Frank then ran in the back door from the garden, and when they arrived, I was holding Dee in my arms when Catherine and Estelle began to cry. My girls, who were grinning broadly, couldn't comprehend why they were acting that way, and they couldn't comprehend why their father and Dee were crying either. I assumed you two were sleeping, so I was able to tell them that once I had my feelings under control, come on, I'll take. When she pulled herself out of my embrace, I said, no, Roger, I'll do it. I've got to get used to looking after them. She added, come on, girls, we've got lots to talk about. A month later, on our wedding day, Russell and I arrived at the church early, and I asked him to wait while I spoke with Shirley. I then walked over to her grave by myself. Well, girl, you set me up nice and proper, didn't you? I don't want you to be upset with me over it. I believe you're right. Although Dee will be a wonderful mother to the girls. Shirley, you are aware of what you have done. She will eventually want children of her own, but don't you dare hold it against me when we are all comfortable together. I'd better leave now, but I'll be back with the girls in a few weeks. Dee and I are leaving tomorrow for about a week, but I'll tell you everything when we return. For now, sweetie, 10 minutes later, I was standing in front of the same altar once more, but this time I had switched places with Russell. When the service ended, all 8 of my employees got up and left the church before Dee and I began our procession out. I was surprised that my entire family had shown up, and I believe that was Catherine's doing because she can be very persuasive. What confused me was that they were all wearing identical new suits, which was unusual unless they got a bulk deal, which I doubted. They were sitting at the ends of the pews by the aisles, not with their families. I suspected something was wrong. When someone called out a command, the long-handled shovels at the shoulder moved in two neat lines, first to the present, and then into a line of arches for Da and me to walk under you buggers. I said to them, "We're not done yet, Raj," as we stopped beneath the arches while the photographer took pictures. I wondered what they had planned next. Then we had the customary photo call, during which Da received a large bouquet of flowers. When the photographer finished, we began to head for the waiting limousine D. I watched as Da went to Shirley's grave and placed the bouquet next to the one I had left before the wedding. She stood there by herself for a few moments, speaking quietly as no one could hear her, and then she gestured to my girls, who joined her and placed their own small bouquet on their mother's grave. It was then that I realized where the 3 bouquets from Estelle's wedding came from. It was clear if I had only considered it. Proceeded to the limousine, but as we got closer, I noticed that it had been replaced by my old Bedford van. I had last seen it 3 weeks prior, when the guys decided our yard needed to be cleaned up. I assumed it had been sent to the scrapyard, but now it was standing there looking better than ever, with a liver and a chauffeur at the wheel, bright new paint ribbons hanging from the ladders on the roof rack, and a sliding side door that revealed the back had been equipped with a sofa for Da and me to sit on. It's a convertible, boss, if you get. I'm impatient. Just pull the lever under your arm, and you've got a bed. One of the boys whispered, "You have a bed." And there were smiles everywhere. I climbed inside, and the sliding door was locked open for the short drive to the hotel where the reception was held that night. Dee and I woke up at an odd hour to hear her crying. "What's wrong, babe?" I asked. What's a stupid, inane way to ask her? I'm just so happy, but I'm annoyed with myself for how I behaved toward you. Would wait forever. But when I put her in my arms and kissed her, I told her to stop thinking about the past. Our past was never brought up again, and the girls soon began calling DM mother instead of mom, which they saved for Shirley. Dee frequently asked the girls how mummy would do something and then followed suit. A few years went by before that train whistle sounded again, and one evening we were all watching a video when the phone rang. While I was pausing the video, I answered it. I heard my daughter say, "It's for you, mother." Someone called poor Tisha D. I took the phone from her, hit the speaker button, and put it down. "Hello. Tish, how are you doing? I'm in a real state and I caught George running around on me. I'm getting divorced, so I really need to meet up with you for a chat. I suppose I could meet you for lunch, but hold on a minute while I check my diary." As she picked up her handbag, I was shocked to learn that Dee was going to reconnect with Portia. I smiled and asked, "What's the DAT today?" without addressing anyone specifically. On August 3rd, Portia's voice came over the phone. "How about August 6th, 2026? Dee said, 2026, which is 20 years away. "You must be kidding," Portia replied. "No, Tish, I'm quite serious. By that time, all 3 of our children should be out of the house, so I should have time for lunch with you 3 children. When Dee turned off the phone and sat back with a silly smile on her face, I realized what she had said to the Portia twins. "Well, that's what the doctor thinks, but it's a little early to be sure," I said, realizing that Roger and I actually have 2 in a bit right now. There's a chance it could be 2 in 2 bits twins run in my family. Goodbye, Portia will call me in about 20 years. Hopefully, we'll have changed our phone number by then. Be certain before I informed you and the girls.